Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Big Questions, Small Steps. My name is Amanda, and I'm so glad that you could join me today. Today, we're going to continue on our mini-series talking about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormon Church. We've talked about the different roles of men and women. We've talked about their history. We've talked about their beliefs. We've talked about their holidays. And now, my friends, we are on to talking about heaven and the end of days and what do they think is going to happen. So, hold on to your hats, hit that intro, and we'll begin. So in the Mormon Church, there is a prophet who they believe is speaking for God in current times. Okay? That prophet is the one speaking for God. So there's the prophet who's giving the message, but did you know that there's also a group of people within the Mormon Church, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who is in that leadership role? They kind of keep everything running within the church. We're going to talk about that first before we get into the hereafter. Okay? So, the church's hierarchy consists of a total of 6 levels, or 6 individuals. Okay? That's not the prophet. This is the hierarchy. So there is the first presidency, which is the president and 2 counselors. They are the top of the top. They're the ones that are making the decisions for their congregation. They're the ones determining if this location is good, do they need to send people out, all that different things. The second level is the quorum of the 12 apostles, giving a hat note, whatever you want to call it, hat tip, to when Jesus had the 12 apostles, those close friends who were going out telling all these good things that he was doing. That's why they have the quorum of the 12 apostles. Basically, they don't want anybody to have too much authority or too much influence, so they have this group of 12 that kind of balances everything out. And the next level, there is what's known as the first quorum of the 70. So we went from 3 to 12 to 70. Okay? This is individuals that are representative, of a wide group or a wide range, a wide population base of the Mormon Church. So they would try to get people of different ages, different ethnicities, different backgrounds to really be able to speak most accurately about what's going on within the church. What do they need to be worried about? What do they need to change to make things better? After that, interestingly, is a stake president. So the stake presidency is somebody who really has a feel for what's going on overall in their church. For example, in their area, in their community of households, what's going on in that area. They're the ones that have direct say, they relay different things. Then you have the ward bishopric. So not the ward bishop, the ward bishopric. So this person is more removed, and they kind of check over a bunch of different Mormon churches, okay? And then you have the individual members. So there's the individual members. The ward bishopric doesn't really have a church. They just kind of wander all over everything, keeping track of everything. Then you have the stake president, so essentially the president of your church, okay? The first quorum is a small group of people from your church when they go to church meetings and things like that they can speak to. You have the quorum of 12. So from that church community, they're going to pick 12 people who are going to speak to the president and their counselors and really make a lot of the hardcore decisions. That's the leadership portion. Messy? Yeah. It's important to know that all those leadership roles are by men. Remember, in the Mormon tradition, women are in charge of the household, women are in charge of nurturing. They don't need to be worried about church. The church business is men's business. Now, it's also important to notice that so the Mormon church encouraged people of any race or nationality to be part of the Mormon church. However, being a leadership role was only accessible to white men until 1977. 77. 5 years before I was born. That baffled me. 77. If you were a man who had Hispanic background, you could not be a church leader. It didn't matter how devout you were, how long you'd been there, you weren't allowed to be a church leader. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So that was interesting, very interesting. So you have the leadership rules, and then you have the prophet. Now the prophet, remember, started with Joseph Smith Jr., and he had revelations where Jesus and God and angels came to him and told him different things. Then other people started saying, oh yeah, they spoke with me too, and they told me to do this, and that was quickly kiboshed, and the revelation came to Joseph Smith Jr. that he was the only person to receive these revelations. They also say that he received the revelations because only his ancestors had received those revelations previously. They just didn't acknowledge them. So moving forward in the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Church, all the different prophets had a connection to Joseph Smith Jr. They were descendants of that line. Prophets and presidents along the way, because the prophet and the president are two different spots. Joseph Smith Jr., to my knowledge, is the only one who occupied both spots for a short period of time. But even Joseph Smith Jr. quickly left the presidency role to maintain just the prophet role. It got to be too much. They currently, interestingly, with the retirement of Wallace B. Smith in the early 21st century, the direct descendant line from Joseph Smith Jr. ended. Can you only imagine the turmoil that must have been going on in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? This person, this lineage, had been their leader for all these years, and it was done. The prophet was only ever male, and the prophet had to have the ability to see the visions and hear these different things. So if there was a male in the lineage that didn't want any part of the religion, he was clearly not the prophet. If it was a female, she was clearly not the prophet. So all the way through until Wallace B. Smith, there was a direct lineage to Joseph Smith Jr. Now, when Wallace B. Smith retired as being prophet, when he passed away, they weren't quite sure what to do, but they looked at their president, and when the president gave a speech about Wallace B. Smith's passing, he spoke with such conviction that people believed that he was the new prophet. So Russell M. Nelson became the new prophet. Russell M. Nelson was both the president and the prophet for a short period of time, until he stopped being the president and he focused on being the prophet. He's not related to Joseph Smith Jr. Now, this is important because in the Mormon church, yes, they validate the Bible, they validate the Torah, they validate the Book of Mormon, they validate all the other ancient scriptures. However, the modern day prophet is typically considered a more important and relevant source of revelation than anything else. The Mormon Church believes the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints believes that they have an open canon. So they can learn from the path, but they believe that God is always trying to speak and direct his people, always trying to speak and direct his church. The church's situation is always changing, which is why God continues to change, and God continues to tell and direct. He doesn't want his people to fail. So because of that, they put more emphasis on the modern prophet's words than the Bible, than the Book of Mormon, than the Torah, than anything else. And that's interesting to me. Because in many other religions, there will be people who will become almost fundamentalist and say, oh no, we're going back to basics. We're going back to the Bible. We're going to just the facts, and we're taking away everything else. And this flips it on its head. Is it kind of comforting with the idea that God is still speaking and still directing us? Yeah, I completely could get on board with that. Very interesting indeed. So let's jump to a different topic, because I'm all about jumping today. In their understandings, okay, there are some different places. I'm sure you've heard of the Garden of Eden, okay? Nobody necessarily knows quite where the Garden of Eden is. There are people who have ideas. In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they firmly believe that the Garden of Eden was in Davis County, Missouri. So long time ago, when Adam and Eve lived on the earth, God was creating the world. It was in Davison County, Missouri. Now, was it called Davison County, Missouri at that time? No, but that's believed that where it was. Okay, Davison County, Missouri. They believe that that is actually where they lived. It was nearby, I should say, because when they were driven out of the Garden of Eden, that's where they went. Davidson County, Missouri. Do I know what county is next to Davison County? No, but that's where they believe they went. Many people in the Mormon Church still believe that that area in Davidson County, Missouri is very holy. They believe that when it is time for God to come again, when it's the last judgment, that's where he's going to go. He's going to go to Davidson County, Missouri. Now, whether you believe that or not, that's up to you. It's just interesting. So let's talk about what they think is going to happen at the end of days. Okay, so there's many different people who have different ideas of what's going to happen when our time is done. Okay, we're going to talk about death in just a moment, but they believe as a whole, the Mormon Church believes as a whole, when the day of reckoning, we'll call it, happens, God will come to the Garden of Eden, and everyone will fall into their assigned celestial kingdoms. And we're going to talk about that in a moment as well. So there's 3 different kingdoms. Depending on what level you're at, depends on how good you were, the deeds that you did. They don't believe in a hell. They don't believe that it's going to be all fire and brimstone and all these terrible things. No, they believe that God's going to come to earth. A great peace is going to go over the land, and everyone will exist kind of like in tiers on earth as far as what level they're at. So very interesting that that's what they view happens when they die. They believe that their body is just a vessel. So when they die, it doesn't necessarily matter. You don't desecrate the body, you don't do bad things to it, but whether you are buried, whether you are cremated, that's completely your decision. your body is no longer of use. It's your soul that moves on. So that's what they do for their death. Okay. Now let's talk about Zion. So many people believe that in order for God to come, Zion or a new Jerusalem needs to be built. Okay. Many of Joseph Smith Jr.'s early revelations were prophesied about how God wouldn't come until they built a Zion. Okay. They thought that they had to build this Jerusalem, this new Jerusalem, a religious utopia, and it was going to be centered in Jackson County, Missouri. Now, I don't know about you. I've never been to Jackson County, Missouri. That's where it's supposed to be. Maybe it's amazing. I don't know. I should probably check it out. So the prophet was urging his followers at that time when he received this revelation that if they built this Zion, this place with this beautiful temple, all these different statues, this pure white holy place, if everybody gave all they had, that surely God would come, he would bless his people, bring peace to the land, everything would be good. He ran into a problem. Because when he asked his followers to give everything they had, they failed to voluntarily turn over everything they had to Joseph Smith Jr. and the church. They kept their home. They kept some clothes. They kept some cattle. They kept some food. They kept things back to take care of themselves and their families, whereas Joseph Smith Jr. wanted them to give everything so that they could create this place so that God could provide for all of them. And he said because they were not willing to fully commit and give God everything, God wasn't coming, was not coming in that moment. And he said only God would reveal where Zion was supposed to be built at a later date. And he said that they should pray for that revelation. So all the different prophets are praying for this revelation. They don't know when Zion's going to be built. They don't know where Zion's going to be built. So that's why they need to have the prophets, because then they're going to tell them that information. Joseph Smith Jr. also received a revelation that God would come later, like I said. Now, the community of Christ, the people who were in the East that didn't follow Joseph Smith Jr. over to the West, and the LDS Church both have differing opinions, or should I say a spectrum of opinions. Some believe that Zion is going to be a physical space, and it's going to be in Jackson County, Missouri. Some believe that it's not going to be a physical space. It's going to be more of like a spiritual awakening, that people will feel God. It's not going to be a literal city. So there's that variance of, okay, so what's actually going to happen? But they do still believe that they need the prophet because they're the ones that is giving them this direction as to how to bring about these good things to create a space where God will want to come. And do I think that's bad? No. Why would we not want to create a better world? That makes absolutely every sense to me. So let's talk just for a moment about this concept of heaven. So they believe that when you die, when Jesus or God comes back to earth, he comes to Zion, you're going to automatically be filtered into one of these three kingdoms or versions of heaven, okay? They're essentially three different levels. That's why I call them tiers, okay? On the bottom level, it would be just like earth as it is today, okay? It's open to anyone who did not do any good at all. They didn't receive the gospel of Jesus Christ. They didn't testify to the goodness of Jesus Christ. They never did anything good at all. If that's you, then the Mormon tradition, this is your life. This is what it's going to be like, just like it is now. You're going to have people who steal, and you're going to have people who do good things, and you're going to live in this existence. Now, as you live in this existence, it's not necessarily that you're trying to get up to the other levels. This is where you are. Now, if you made it to level 2, that would be known as the terrestrial level. Oh, I forgot to mention. The first level, the one that's just like Earth, is telestial, like a telephone. Telestial. The next level is the terrestrial, and that's regarded as the eternal home for good people who lived their lives guided by the basics, but didn't really fully accept Jesus Christ in their lives through baptism. So this could very well be a lot of Christians, a lot of Jewish people, a lot of people who do good things, but they didn't accept Jesus in their life. So Earth level, did nothing good, never. Second level, you did good things. You just didn't accept Jesus. Now, this second level is like Earth, but on your best week. Things are going your way. You're getting green lights on the way to work. You got a bonus. You get a free coffee through the drive-thru. You get out of a speeding ticket. All the good things are coming at level 2, terrestrial. Now, you get to level 3. Again, you're not progressing through the levels. Based on your actions in your daily life now will determine where you're going to end up in which of those 3 levels after you die. Or when the day of reckoning comes. Whatever one. The third level is known as the celestial level. This is the highest kingdom of glory. It is considered to be the heavenly home of the most obedient and valiant humans. This level is only obtainable to those who were baptized in the Mormon Church, who did good deeds, who fulfilled the 13 articles of faith. So basically, if you're Mormon, you can hit that third level as long as you live your life as you're supposed to. That third level, what is it like? Well, some would compare it to a Christian heaven of streets of gold, clouds, angels, all that jazz. Other people would describe it as you are on a fully paid, all-inclusive vacation in the most beautiful spot ever for the rest of your life. You have no worries. You have no cares. You don't have to worry about going to work ever. You don't have to worry about cooking meals. Everything is done for you. That's the celestial level. You have lived such a good life that this is your reward. And that's what they believe. Interesting, huh? So, we've now heard a lot about the Mormon Church, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Next time, we're going to learn about the conversion process. So, if you liked today's video, please go ahead and hit that like button so I know I'm doing an okay job. And if you want to learn about how to convert to the Mormon Church, don't forget to hit subscribe so you'll be alerted first when we release that video. Until next time, I hope you take care. Bye-bye.